It was wealth, and wealth is power. If you don't own any assets and resources, you don't have any wealth. Consequently, when you put 100% of everything of value in this society in the hands of the dominant white group, blacks haven't got a snowball's chance. They can't make it. It's impossible. It is academically impossible and theoretically impossible right now for black folk to continue to exist without reparation. They got nothing. You don't own and control anything.
Black Americans have been systematically, socially engineered into the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game. You do not own and control a sufficient amount of anything to be competitive in America. You're going down.
What we want to do is to get about the business for the first time in the history of this nation, design a policy that is strictly devoted to the economic and social reform of black America by giving them a national plan that would be proactive in resolving some of the major impediments and conflicts and developing broad racial strategies for dealing with white racism in this country.
After all my years in politics and national politics and international politics, I left government saying that somebody got to get out here and start raising Cain on behalf of black folk.
I see myself as an empowerment pragmatist, saying how do we get from where we need to go as quickly as possible to save ourselves from becoming a permanent underclass in this country by the year 2013.
And one of the ways that you say will not work
is integration.
You cannot get equality through civil rights and integration. What decides your opportunities in America is what you own and control. Why would you ever do anything that breaks yourself into smaller pieces when you're already a plan systematically programmed the minority? Time is up. You have made as a race every religion, every ethnic group, every racial group rich. There is nobody else left on earth to make rich but yourselves. If we don't solve these problems, blacks in America will become a permanent underclass of beggars and criminals. And an underclass means those individuals who, by the nature of their circumstances, will be forced to live as either beggars or criminals. That's where you're going.
Now, the reason you cannot win is that you've been locked into this low level of a real-life monopoly game. You do not own and control enough of wealth. See, in 1860, when you were 98% slaves, you had an ownership of 1/2% of this nation's wealth in 1860 on the eve of the Civil War. And here you are 140 years after slavery when you're supposedly 100% free and you still only have 1/2% of this nation's wealth. You cannot compete. The typical average white person in America has 3,500 times more money than you have. You have not moved one iota in acquiring the most significant and the most important thing in our society. It is not civil rights. It is not integration that's going to give you equality and equal opportunity. Racism has nothing to do with attitudes, with prejudice, and with bias. Racism is a competitive group contest between people for resources and for superiority. And racism is a race without a finish line.
Doesn't have anything to do with voting. That's an intellectual masturbation process. Not one president, not one candidate for public office ever get up and say, here's what I'm going to do for black folk. Consequently, nobody's ever stood up and said, here's what black folk are going to get. You're talking about the candidates. The first thing these black folks should be asking is not what candidate you're going to vote for. Who cares? What you should be asking is, what are you going to get? If you didn't get the damn thing, why are you voting?
No black gave up his life to vote. He might have had his life taken from him, but he didn't give it up. I'm not going to vote for anything, anybody, any candidate, any political party, unless they commit and tell me specifically and solely what you're going to do for black folk.
But the two things that are hurting us, we don't have any resources. The second thing you don't have is they stole your social cohesiveness. You either play as a team or you lose by default.
That's why you all can't get ahead. You all play as individuals. And you listen to these black activists on the streets saying, we're not a monolithic people. He's wrong. Wealth and power follows the numbers. You haven't got a lot of blacks with you, pooling your money, pooling your votes, pooling your interests, pooling your labor. Then other people will pick you clean and cherry pick you.
You as black folk are not guests in America. You are not guests on this earth. You walk on sacred ground paid for by the blood, sweat, and tears and suffering and sacrificing of millions of black people.
You are special people. Nobody's been mistreated, maltreated like you are. Black folk were the economic engines that drove the development of this nation.
You're the first original people on earth. You're the first people in this country. You're the only people denied the right to own property, denied to have the fruits of your labor. The only person denied the right to have an education, denied the right to be married and have children, or to be able to have weapons, tools, and lands and animals. Well, you're the only people that's fought in every war this country's ever been in. Everybody else in this country, I don't care what their racial, ethnic extraction is, they have fought this country. This country owe you. They owe you. And that's what I want you to start demanding from them. But I love y'all, and And please forgive me for having such love for black folk.
Claude, thank you, and I love you.